Hey everybody, welcome to the InPsight Show. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. It's pretty crazy right now, right? I mean, wow. We got some crazy stuff we're looking into today on the show, gang. And more so, it's about how to navigate the crazy stuff that we are seeing because, we really are just going to continue to see some pretty crazy things. And it's going to keep going. So today, our podcast topic is when the ship is sinking, be the water. Now, what the hell does that even mean? What? No, I'm not becoming Yoda. Ship sinking is water be you. No, I'm not trying to be Yoda. I'm saying that it's been made really apparent to me through talking with all of these angels that as we watch the United States continue to try to come back from an extremely far-right pendulum swing, we're seeing some really interesting sociological phenomenon present itself. And part of that phenomenon, I feel a big part of that phenomenon is seeing that the people in the United States are really sick and tired of all of this fighting. We just had the No Kings protest on the 18th of October, and that 7 million people they're estimating came out to do that. I mean, that's a lot of people, right? That's a whole bunch of people. And that's just the people that actually could make it. On October 18th, I had a really amazing concert that I played with my wonderful dad. And my dad's side of the family is Scot, which makes me Scot. I'm Italian too, Scot and Italian. And so we played as the Jaggy Thistles. We played my dad's fundraiser at his church. It was the 15th annual Celtic Fair at St. Andrews in Tacoma, Washington. And so that's what I was doing on October 18th. But funny enough, I mean, we're singing all of these Irish folk songs, right, which are all very anti-king. So that was not exactly an accident that here we are doing all that. But it was really fascinating, you guys, because when you look at the response by just a small handful of people around the No Kings protests, it's almost a little scary. I was watching Facebook, and there was a significant amount of people on there who thought that they were, the protesters in media were AI. They thought that they were bad actors. They thought that they were paid protesters. It's not funny. You guys, it's not funny. It's not funny. We have gotten so down the rabbit hole of believing whatever we feel like believing in this country that we've basically gone crazy. Okay. I mean, that's the bottom line. You cannot hold a space for this much insanity and denial and not call it delusion. I mean, it's pretty intense. It is delusion. So there's all these folks out there that heard on Fox News or heard on some really, really fringy right-wing broadcaster that all of these people were paid for by George Soros and all these things. And all I can do is look ahead. I look ahead in the ethers and I look at the midterms and I look at the 2028 election and I look at how this group of people, I like to call them the Heritage Foundation Prime, all these people who have really worked hard to take over the United States so that they could roll back time and share turn back time. And I look at how this just fails. Because, as I've talked about a lot on this podcast, you can't really stop societal evolution. You can't, just because you say you don't like it, doesn't mean it's not happening. I don't like trans people, therefore they're all going to disappear into the thin air and be no more trans people, because I don't like them. I mean, really? So, but we have a lot of people out there in USA land that actually believe if they just don't look at it, it'll just disappear. Kind of like, I don't know, did you ever have a guinea pig when you were a little kid? I did. I loved guinea pigs. I would have 20 guinea pigs now, but my wife would kick me out and I would have to sleep with the guinea pigs. But I had all these guinea pigs, right? And guinea pigs are the funniest little animals. They're really smart. They're very community oriented. They're funny. And a guinea pig if it hides its head under something, if its head is hidden, it thinks that the rest of it's hidden, right? So the guinea pig would have its butt hanging out, but its head was hidden. So by God, you couldn't see the guinea pig. And if you went up and you touched the back of the guinea pig's butt, it would jump 22 feet in the air. It was so flipped out. I want you to put that image in your head. Just springboarding guinea pigs, hundreds of feet in the air, okay? That image of guinea pigs twisting and screaming, and, they make that winking sound, guinea pigs. I don't know if, again, if you've never had them, you don't know. But if you've had a guinea pig and they want lettuce, or they hear you crinkle a produce bag, or they're really smart, actually, with the exception of this head problem. But guinea pigs aren't stupid. They'll hear the produce bag or ripple and cry out, or they will hear the door on the refrigerator open and they'll start winking. It's this wink sound, it's like wink, like a wink, like that, right? So they start winking like crazy. So I want you to have, as I talk about this phenomenon, I want you to have the guinea pig imagery of going up, and this guinea pig has its head underneath of a wash rag. So it thinks its entire body is hidden. When I was a little kid, I would go up and I had the guinea pigs that had not the real slick hair and not the super long hair. I only had one of those. They're called Abyssinian guinea pigs. And man, it was hard to get the sawdust out of their hair. So anyway, the ones whose hair are kind of in the middle, like the middle length, and they have cowlicks all over, and they're kind of those guinea pigs. I would go up to my guinea pig whose head was hidden, and it thought it was hidden, and I would just tickle I would barely touch, right, the end of its little hairs. Oh my God. The guinea pig would just freak out. Week, and it would jump in the air and run around its cage 45,000 times because how did I know? How did I know where it was hiding? It was so hidden, its head. So when I talk about this consciousness that I'm about ready to get into, when I talk about being the water, you don't want to be the guinea pig. You want to be the water. When the ship is sinking, be the water, okay? Because come the midterms, come this next presidential election, there's going to be a lot of our fellow Americans out there who, for one reason or another, are more comfortable just putting their head under the blanket. And when the voting results touch their hind end and they scream and yell into the air because they're so startled by the fact that it all didn't go the way they were going to go because their head's been under the blanket. So they didn't really see the 7 million protesters. That's going to be really rough for these folks because I can't stress this enough, you guys. We have gotten into a dangerous precedent in the United States. And that dangerous precedent is just having the luxury of believing whatever we want to believe by listening to whatever news outlet we want to listen to. The problem with this is that we breed pockets of society, and I say breed because we're bringing our children up in these pockets of society that really only believe there is this one modality of operation. So in the wild and wily case of the Heritage Foundation and its subsequent folk, and I use their name a lot. I use them as an example, but there's so many organizations besides them, you guys. I just use them as a wide brushstroke, okay? The Heritage Foundation ilk, how's that? When those children are brought up in families and they're told that gays are bad and trans people are mentally ill, and that blue people who vote blue, I don't know many blue people. If you're blue, breathe. Okay, breathe. Get some color back in your cheeks. But the people who are voting Democratic or liberal or whatever, they're told that these people are evil and bad and following Satan. So when I talk about breeding bubbles of thought, I really mean that. And, we've got to be careful on the peace, love, and harmony liberal side of things. We've got to be careful not to breed children that believe that anyone who voted for Trump is a piece of crap and part of Satan and a terrible human being. And I know there's some of you out there that are listening to this going, but they are those people. And there are some of you on the right listening to this podcast going, but the people on the left are those people. You get to believe what you want, okay? However, let us not breed pockets of people that are that absolute, because it does not help where we are headed on the earth, people. All right. Have your opinions. That's fine. I think one of the most destructive things that has ever occurred in my own life, you guys, is God, seeing the personal opinion of so many of my friends. I wish I never would have looked on social media, because I can't unsee some of these things that some of my dear longtime friends have said. And I'm sure they feel the same way about me, because why wouldn't they, right? If I'm feeling this way, it's like, what in the hell? And I know these people, and these people are kind, loving people who would give you the shirt off their back, and then they're posting this bizarre stuff about, they took our jobs, immigrants taking all our money. And I'm like, how can you possibly believe this? It's not even true. You can't get Social Security money from the government if you're not a citizen, if you don't have a Social Security number. This is just, the insanity is so thick out there. So anyway, whatever. The point is, when the ship is sinking, you're going to want to be the water, and you're not going to want to be the ship, and you sure as heck are not going to want to be a rat or a guinea pig on the ship, because, weak, you're going to be freaked right out. Water is about flow, guys. And it's really interesting, because if you look at the dynamics of a ship, it's especially modern ships, they're made of steel. 100,000 plus pounds of steel, and it's floating. It's floating on the water. Why is it floating? It's floating because it is displacing mass. It's its design. It's displacing mass, right? So then it can float. And if you're the ship and you're displacing mass and something breaches your hull, you start to sink. You start to take on water. So that zero buoyancy that's created around that hull begins to fail, right? So obviously the ship starts to sink. Right now, the United States is a ship it's an old ship. It's a ship that needs to go to port. It's been needing to go to port for a while. It's got barnacles and rust. I mean, it smells like dead sardines way underneath in the very bottom decks where they're running. I mean, there's like bilge water down there. It's nasty where they're trying to run the ship. This ship has needed to go to port for a long time to get fixed up, but there's been a lot of denial around that. And we've been very, very busy blaming everybody, including the elements, for the decline of the ship. Okay? So we've been saying, it's the ocean's fault. The ocean is corroding the ship. Or, it's the barnacles' fault. Or, it's the captain's fault. Or, it's those Puerto Rican crew members. That definitely is why the ship is sinking. I mean, we go through the blame game in America because we have the privilege to go through the blame game. I don't think the people in Gaza who are starving, who are being bombed on a regular basis, I don't think those people are busy blaming everybody for why the ship's sinking. They're too busy trying to find something to eat. So before you hear an argument in what I'm saying, there really isn't one. We have privilege in this nation. And there are some of us that have more privilege than others, okay? Yet we still, as a nation, are privileged. We are not fighting with ourselves. We do not have bombs raining down on top of us. Though there are millions of little kids going to school starving and hungry every day, okay? We still live in a country that grows our own food, and it is disgraceful. It is a disgraceful thing that this administration, the Trump administration, in case you listen to this 5 years from now, it is disgraceful that this administration has cut food to kids in the schools. It's disgraceful because we have so much in this country. We are a privileged country. Now, we do not extend those privileges to all people, yet we are still a very privileged country. So we're so privileged. We're sitting in our rusty old crappy ass ship and we're like, oh, it's the ocean's fault. Oh no, there was a seagull and it pooped on the deck and the poop is sinking the ship. I mean, we will come up with any reason at all to blame the lack of attention of the ship's maintenance on somebody else. Well, I don't know if you know much seafaring lore. However, back in the day, before there were very fancy cruise lines and rich people could just buy their way across the sea, and there was always that. But back in the day, even if you booked passage on a ship and paid for that passage, back when the ships were 3-masted and 2-masted and you were going across the Mediterranean, even if you booked passage as a passenger, they asked you, do you know how to work on a ship? Because you might have to pitch in. And women were not traditionally allowed as crew members on ships. It was considered bad luck because the ocean was considered female. The ship was considered female. And the male crew believed that having women on board with men was bad luck because it would make the sea mad as a mistress and it would make the ship mad as a mistress. So you'd have the ocean and you'd have the ship angry with you if you had women on board. And plus, I mean, if there was a woman on board, she wasn't safe either. You have a bunch of guys out there in the middle of the Atlantic for 3 months and she's in a lot of trouble. So women were just not traditionally allowed on ships. Now they could book passage, but it was special ships that would only take women as passengers way back in the day. Not even kidding you. So when we think about being on this rusty ship that's sinking, called the United States of America, and currently it is, but we're so busy blaming everybody for the ship sinking, we've forgotten that we were taking on that ship as a passenger. So we do have certain duties if the ship is in duress. No lie. But how many of us have been stepping up to do our duties? Not many of us, okay? And there are many of us that have, since it got to the point where it's starting to leak water. Well, had we all just been kind of doing our rounds like we probably should have been, and, we'd taken turns passing the lantern around, and each one of us would have gone down in the sewage-smelling hull with all the rats squeaking and the water sloshing, and you got to hold a cloth over your face because it just stinks so bad down there. If we all would have taken a turn, we all would have seen the water level rising because the bilge pump is failing. So here comes the water inside the hull. But we haven't all been taking our turns. Now, if you're listening to this and you're somebody who's a huge social activist and you're getting really upset by what I'm saying, you're like, I've been taking my turn. Clearly, I'm not talking about you, okay? I'm talking about the rest of us out here, who, especially those of us on the left, who we get this, boy, do we get a rush. We're going to go out to No King's Day and show solidarity, and then we go home and watch Netflix. You know what I mean? And I'm not taking away from the solidarity of the No King's marches, you guys. I'm just saying, come on. So, we've got to do a little more for our country than just show up and complain when we don't like what's happening. And if all of the passengers on the ship would have been more in rotation of taking care of the ship, then sections of the ship wouldn't have gotten so gnarly and terrible that they're now rotten through, and now we've got breached hulls, and now the thing is sinking. So we have two choices. We can try to complain and blame about the ship, or we can be the water. What does be the water mean? Because you don't want, if you're the water in the ship, you're causing it to sink, right? Okay, now, this is going to be an extended analogy, so just follow me on this. On every ship, major cruise ship, I don't know if you've ever been on them. I've been on a cruise ship a couple of times in my life. And if you've ever been on a ship with passengers, they're required by law to have lifeboats. And there has to be enough lifeboats that all of the passengers can actually get on there and be able to escape. Part of the issue with the Titanic, we've all heard of the Titanic disaster and Leonardo DiCaprio and the incredible James Cameron film. We've all heard of the Titanic story. Part of the tragedy of the Titanic story is they just flat up didn't have enough lifeboats because they didn't think they'd sink. Okay? So we're going to look at our analogy of the United States is this giant hulking rusted through, starting to sink. It's starting to list to the right now. The ship is listed to the right. Okay, so it's listing to the right. Its lower chambers are filling up with water. As more water pours in, it tears away more sections of rust. So more water comes in. So it's taking on water at an accelerated rate right now. And in the Titanic, they just didn't believe the ship would sink, so they didn't have enough lifeboats. In a modern ship, there are enough lifeboats for everybody. So what we're watching right now in the United States is we're watching people start to, rather than help bail the boat out, this giant ship that's tipped to the right and sinking in the middle of the Atlantic, people are heading towards the lifeboats. They're going to Mexico. They're going to Puerto Rico. They're going to anywhere they can get. They're getting out of the United States. They're going to France. They're going to Portugal. People are in the lifeboats and they're leaving. Now, those people, most of those people have already gone. So now there's less boats for the rest of us that are on the ship. Now, I'm not throwing any shade or blaming anybody that had the opportunity to get themselves to a different country while this is going on. I'm simply talking about elbow grease on deck of the current ship. And in fact, I've had some clients and I have heavily recommended, because their angels were heavily recommending that if they could get out of the country, go ahead and get out of the country. If you could do it, do it. So, and that's not that person's walk necessarily to help with bailing out the ship. So again, if you hear this and I've talked to you about this and you're like, but my angel said to leave and now it sounds like I left everybody stranded. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at the fact that there are less and less people who are really willing to bail the ship at this point for any reason. There's some people that are like, no, the ship's taken on so much water. Why would I bother bailing it? Other people are like, I'm not getting into that sewage water. You've got to be out of your mind. And again, had we all been doing our rounds, had we all been doing our part, we could have gone down there and just simply taken our stuff and blah, blah, blah. But we didn't. So here we are. Okay. So with that being said, when I say if the ship is sinking, be the water, water is flow. And if we are going to thwart the water, we have to understand the flow of the water. So be the water, be in a place of flow. If we get static with the water, if we stand there and we're not flowing with the water, bailing, if you ever bailed something, if you ever bailed water, bailing is a fluid action. Bucket in, splash out, bucket in, splash out. You're in this loop, this continual loop. Bucket in, splash out. So we've got to be the flow of the water. We've got to be the water, become the water to understand its flow. Because the ship is done. The ship is sinking. And we can patch the ship to get it back to port, but we are in the process, everybody, of a great migration of everybody off this ship onto another ship. And there is a ship in port that's being built, and it kind of looks like the ship we're all on, except it's way better. It's newer. There's far more access to food and showers and crew cabins for everybody. That ship is still being built in port. And we should have been on that ship in 2012. When we went into the feminine time frame, everybody should have gotten off the old rusty piece of crap bucket boat that we're on now and gotten onto this new ship that was basically set up for everybody. Obviously, I'm talking about a modality of belief. I'm also talking about a timeline. I'm also talking about a modality of where we would have been most highly accented in the feminine time frame. Sharing is caring, you guys. And the more we share, the better off we are. But we're still in the mine, me, 2-year-old section of the broken portion of the conquest masculine. So this is all weird, right? The whole thing is weird. So we're on the bucket boat. It's sinking. And there are still those trying to fix the actual boat. And God bless them, because they will at least get us back to port to where we can get off the boat and get onto the new ship that we should be on. So when we're talking about being the flow, one of the important things in being the flow, in order to bail or in order to understand how the water's coming into the boat, is to not resent the water. Okay. And in this case, in my analogy, the water is The water is an ugly hatred that exists. It exists outside of our planet. It exists outside of our dimension. This ugly hatred just hangs out there. And as Yoda said in one of the Star Wars movies, the dark side of the Force periodically dresses up as something totally different with a totally different name and a totally different way of being, and makes its approach back to Earth to see if it can stick. I mean, and we can look at the dark side of the Force in the United States. In the 1800s, it was the Democratic Party that was running slaves and really, really wanted to enshrine slavery in the Constitution. This is pre-Civil War, okay? Then it was McCarthyism. Then it was, before that, it was Adolf Hitler and the Nazi movement. Now it's the extreme white nationalist movement. This darkness which now at this time is hiding under the Republican banner. So during this time frame, this same darkness just puts on a different costume and makes a different approach. So if we're to understand the flow of the water, we can't resent the water. We can't resent the darkness. Now, I understand, I'm not a fan of darkness. I do a lot of dealing with dark things in my work as a person that talks to angels. The junkie cousins of the angels are demons. So I occasionally stub my toe on one of those guys hanging around. They don't want to talk to me, you guys, and I don't want to talk to them either. Okay? I don't want to deal with evil. Evil doesn't want to deal with me. Not because I'm powerful or anything like that, but because I embody a lot of light. I choose it. I choose light. And light is very harmful to darkness. What happens to the dark if you turn on the light in the room? It disappears instantly. You have eradicated the dark when you turn on the light. Okay? So if you resent the water that's pouring into the boat, instead of just trying to be in flow with it. Now, I'm not saying be in flow with darkness, but I kind of am, but I'll get to what I'm talking about. You have to understand that this element of water, we live on a water planet. It's the most predominant element. It's everywhere. If you get into opposition with it, you're going to lose. Now, darkness is a side of the Force, evil, whatever you want to call it. If you directly oppose evil, if you've got a lot of light in you, chances are you're going to best the evil, but you're not going to kill it. It's just going to go exist somewhere else. So trying to go up against you as one individual, up against evil, you know how you do that? You affect more people to shine their light. That's how you do it. If you take your sword and you go running out there and by God, you're going to slay evil all by yourself like the Archangel Michael and you're into it, you will have a significant impact in pounding the dark situations and trapping them. But your bigger impact is made if you are working with a group. Thus our No Kings protests. But look at in the No Kings protests, everybody was the water. They were flowing with it. Nobody was angry. Nobody was becoming the anger that they protested. It was a flow of people. And so you got to understand the flow. Water is flow. Now, in our boat scenario, we make water the enemy. Rather than looking at ourselves and saying, you know what the enemy is neglect. Neglect. Neglect is the enemy. We have neglected our boat. Our ship. It's actually a giant ass ship. We have neglected our ship. Neglect, apathy, laziness. These are the enemies, not the water. The water is flow. It's flowing. And we look at the water like it's evil when it breaches our hull. If we look at the dark side of the Force, okay? That is flow out there. It's not flow that we need to participate with. But we should be aware of it because it's there and it pops its head up and tries to take over every once in a while. Then it fails and it sinks underneath of its rock for a while and hopes people forget about it. And then it comes back again, like as is happening right now. So when we want to make the evil the bad guy, and isn't that convenient? The devil's the evil one. If evil is the bad thing, and we can paste a sticker of evil on anybody, isn't that convenient for those who are marketing towards violence and chaos? Because the Democrats are evil. The Republicans are evil. The Jews are evil. The Palestinians are evil. The gays are evil. The trans are evil. The Christians are evil. Look at that sticker that can just get stuck on everybody. So if you are being the water, if you are being the flow, and you're understanding the flow is breaching the ship, what is the predominant flow right now? Well, the predominant flow is not actually even evil or nastiness or dysfunction. The predominant flow, guys, the predominant flow is actually love. But we've been focusing so much on neglecting our duties in this giant ship that it's been our neglect that is the enemy. But in order to identify that enemy, we have to look inside ourselves on that one and say, well, how have I neglected what I could have done? And you guys, not everybody has finances to share. I got that. Not everybody has time to share. You know what you do have time to do, though? Most of us have to go to the grocery store. Here comes a grocery store line story. You called it. Most of us have to go to the grocery store. If I'm standing in line with people in the grocery store line, I can speak kindly to another person in that line. Nobody's forcing me not to. I can say something nice. I can say something totally out of the blue. I can pay attention to their energy or listen to part of their conversation. Or if they're blue, I can chime in with something helpful, hopeful. I can change the flow of that person's day for that moment. I might not be able to change their life, but I can change the flow of their day in that moment. And that is free. Now, if I decide not to do that, okay, fine. But what are the other ways that I can affect the flow? So when I talk about be the water, when the ship is sinking, be the water. Figure out how to flow. Figure out how not to demonize what's coming through, because we're actually technically floating on all of that. So now we're not going to make the water into an evil force. We're going to make the water into a predominant force. So isn't it interesting that love, kindness, love is the most predominant reaction in a human being? That's absolutely 100% true. Ask the Google, ask whatever AI program you're making your best friend right now. Ask that program. The act of love, the act of compassion drives humanity more than any other emotion. I mean, we all know the stories of the mom whose minivan would get run off the road accidentally and her child is trapped under the minivan and the mom jumps out and just lifts the car off the kid and the car is, 2,500 pounds, but mom becomes super strong and lifts it up. Love affects the quantum field. Fear gets in the way of love and then interferes with our superpowers, you guys. Yet, if we're talking about the analogy of a rusty old crunchy ship listing to the right with a big old hole poked in it, and it's all the water's filling it up, and we look at water as the enemy instead of, wow, I'm floating on this thing, and neglected the thing I'm floating on, and now the predominant thing is simply coming inside. That takes a lot of personal responsibility, and we're also taught in the United States not to have any. It's someone else's fault because we're tired, guys. Now we're working 3 jobs. Now people are super broke. Now people are pointing fingers at everybody else to say, you're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem. So, it's gotten ridiculous. And the people who should be owning their mistakes are not. They're blaming people who they've never met with skin browner than theirs. So people won't look at their stuff. All right? So if you're going to be the flow, if you're going to be the water, think about being a predominant element in your community. Water is the most predominant element on the planet Earth. Okay? As far as just if you were to think about the particles of it, there's more water on the planet Earth than there is anything else. It's water. There's water in humans. There's water in the ocean. There's water in the sky. There's water in the plants. It's water. So if you're going to be the water, be the predominant element. And you might need to permeate the hull of another rusty ship and rush in there and get it to list to one side. so that folks can jump off into you. And you can help folks into a lifeboat to get us all back to the damn port, or this brand new ship is almost done being built, and we should all be getting on that one. These old, individual, outmoded, way, way, way too small transatlantic steam-powered passenger vessels that many of us are on right now that have all rusted through and are all being hull breached, they're failing. Because we should have got off them a long time ago. But the only reason we didn't is because because the cruise line basically lobbied Congress and said, you have to stay on the ships. That's what we're doing. So when we look at all of this, gang, when we look at how all of this is coming across and what it's doing and how it's going, when I say be the water, I say be the predominant element. Be flow. Okay? Understand that to others, you might be the enemy because they're not looking at, in this case, their own neglect as adding to the problem. So it's whatever has infiltrated their ship hull. You are the enemy. But we've got to all be the flow, gang, and I'll tell you why. Okay, that's a half an hour of an analogy. You guys have really hung in there well for that. I appreciate that. It's interesting when you're translating angels, and they speak in analogies a lot. They speak in parables a lot. And I think it must be because of the way that human beings learn. Spiritual teachers, when you're listening to Jesus or the Buddhas, they would always tell stories or use analogies. So it doesn't surprise me these angels communicate in this way. And, where we're at today and what's going on now, a lot of flow is needed because every day is a catastrophic, god-awful headline. And if we're all reacting like the little guinea pigs with our little heads in our individual bubbles, and here comes a little kid's fingers to go tickle, 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 tickle on our bums, and we go week, 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 and we jump up in the air and freak out, we're not really available to bail the water, are we? We're too busy jumping 25 feet in the air acting shocked. So, today on our show, we've got crazy things going on. We've got the President of the United States is putting a ballroom on the White House, and the ballroom is paid for by donors. It is not taxpayer money. It is donor money. The weird thing about that, because Trump is not, I'm not a Trump fan, but in fairness, Trump is not the first president to tear up the White House. Roosevelt gutted it on the inside and did all kinds of things with it. And Obama put in a basketball court, and I think Nixon put in a bowling alley. And there are other, one of the presidents, maybe I got Roosevelt wrong. One of the other presidents built the entire West Wing and put a whole West Wing on. So, Trump is not the only president to go after the White House in a remodeling capacity. I think what people are so upset about is that normally when you do something like this, you've got to go through a pretty rigorous process of ripping apart the White House. And you got to go through approvals and committees and all these things. And of course, Trump didn't do any of that. He just signed an executive order and is ripping the thing apart, and he's going to build his ballroom. And, again, to be fair, the United States spends a lot of tax dollars on renting spaces and tents and hotel rooms, big ballrooms to host big international functions. And those are tax dollars. So hopefully, ostensibly, we could use this ballroom, save some of those tax dollars for things like, how about the school lunches that the GOP decided to cut? There's a great idea. But, use those tax dollars for something more productive. I think really the carelessness with which the White House was torn into is really what's got people angry at the end of the day, because it's an analogy for what a wrecking ball the personhood of Donald Trump is. Just ripping stuff apart and doing whatever he wants, even though there's a way to do it. So, a lot of people are very, very upset about that. And, rightfully so. It would have been nice to have a little more heads up before just everything started getting torn apart. However, when we look at how this plays out, we also look at headlines today. I looked at the headline and same guy, Mr. Wrecking Ball, who's just doing his part to demonstrate the hull of a rotten, leaking, sinking ship. That is literally, every day I read about something Donald Trump is doing, and I'm like, buddy, are you trying to sink to the bottom of the ocean? Because you are just breaching your own hull left and right. Here goes another side. Oh, God. It's unbelievable to me. And today I read that he is bashing on ranchers and telling the ranchers that they're not appreciative enough of his tariffs. And that because he wants to buy all this South American beef cheap instead of figuring out what our problems are at home and helping our ranchers here. And keeping in mind, this is also the same administration that just completely gutted all of the subsidies and help for farmers and ranchers at the same time that these tariffs are driving up prices for our farmers and our ranchers. So if you'll notice, if you pick up a newspaper on your phone, whatever, and you read, you're going to see these farmers in the South. I think it was Missouri or somewhere. They had a town hall, and I believe some of them just met to talk about the farming problems. Others of them had tried to get a town hall with their local representatives who didn't show up. And these were Republican representatives. And they wanted to talk about the difficulties they're having. And instead of having any representation there, these farmers just got together and literally just started praying. And that was not what they planned on doing. They planned on getting together and coming up with a plan with the representative, but the representative isn't there. So they just start praying. And they're saying, "Dear God, please help us. I'm going to lose my 6th generation family farm, my 8th generation, my 4th generation family farm. I'm going to lose it." Because in case you don't know, guys, I'm from an ag state up here. I'm in an ag state right now. I'm in the Clarks Fork Valley in Bridger, Montana. And that is an agricultural valley. Lots of cows, lots of crops, corn and wheat and all kinds of other things out here. There's even a turf farm. That's right. There is yet to be a dental floss farm. I have not found one of those yet, but there is a turf farm. Anyway, so, a lot of my right-leaning friends who are not from Montana are always deeply surprised when they hear that I'm a huge agriculture supported, farm and ranch and agriculture. They're surprised because their news outlets are saying that blue people only eat at fancy restaurants and have no idea where their food comes from and only drink milk if it's in a $7 latte. Not even kidding you. So one of my big missions on earth, you guys, is to just show us all how we're way more alike than different. I've always been this girl, and that's not going to change. And I would say to my friends on the East Coast or on the Southwest or wherever they were, my Republican friends, they'd say, "Oh, I didn't know you supported ranching. I would think that you would think ranching was evil with the climate issues." And stockyards and ranching are two different things, guys. The stockyards where they pile up the cows and all that methane from their poo hits the atmosphere. That's different than a ranch. And I really wish we'd do our stockyards differently, not only for the environment, but also for the animals. It's pretty awful. And also the towns by the stockyards. I grew up by the stockyards and oh my God, that is a smell you cannot get it out of your nasal cavities with a metal brush, acid, and help from God. It will not come out. That smell, ugh, God, just thinking about it. Makes my eyes water. My eyes are watering right now just thinking about it. So anyway, I'm way off track. So my Republican friends would be like, "I can't believe you support ag." Well, of course I support ag. We are an agriculture state. Cousins of my family, my great-grandmother's family, the Romines, had a cattle ranch out here. Still do. I don't know how big it is. I haven't been out there in a million years. But ranching and farming is the backbone of my state. That and mining, unfortunately. However, they call it the treasure state because there's so much here. So when my friends were shocked that I was a supporter of the farmers and ranchers, very shocked, I told them why. And I said, I have never in my life met bigger proponents for the environment and conservationists than farmers and ranchers. And I know there's some of you out there that are going to be like, that's not true. Cows, are the ones that are causing all this stuff. Yes, I hear you. I addressed that earlier with the stockyard issue, and we definitely need to fix that. However, the ranchers that I know, you guys, are continually wanting to, if their cows do get an area, they have these huge amounts of acreage to feed cows. And more ranches out here in Montana are going grass-fed, grass-finished. Grass-finished means that when it's coming close to the end of the cow's life, they feed it grass instead of corn. Corn-finished used to be the big deal. In the 70s, I got a corn-finished beef. It makes the cow really fat. If you feed it corn has a lot more sugar in it. So if you feed the cow corn, it poofs the cow up because the ranchers get paid per pound of the cow, not per pound of beef. It's the people who butcher the cows and cut the beef up that make all the money. And if you watched Yellowstone, you heard Beth Dutton talk all about that, okay? But it really is, the ranchers don't make a ton of money off their cows. So and I do support them because a lot of the ranchers I know work very hard to maintain the environment. And they work very, very hard to make sure that even coal and oil and gas don't cut into the ranges, So, it's very fast. It's a weird world. And if you don't know, you don't know. And if you do know, you do know. So my friends were a little bit surprised that I was a huge supporter of ag. And so here comes Trump, and he comes out, I guess today or yesterday, or who even knows. That poor man is trying to just pour gas on himself and light himself on fire. And I don't know why, but he's really working hard to do that. I'm like, Donald, put the gas can down. What are you doing, buddy? Come on. Just go golfing and play with your grandkids. What are you doing? Anyway, comes out today and says that he's going to buy cheap beef from South America because it's cheaper for the consumer. And he was charging tariffs for something, and that was supposed to help our American beef suppliers. Well, it's a very complex problem. That's not going to fix it. And then he went on to say, I really wish that the ranchers would appreciate everything I've done for them, because if they'd pay attention to the tariffs, they'd see how I helped them. And I'm reading this. I'm not even a rancher, you guys. I am such a city girl by Montana standards. You have no idea. And I'm such an outback girl compared to some of my East Coast Republican friends. They think I am a mountain woman. And my Montana friends who are in the ag community are looking at me like, go get your legs waxed, pretty girl. Okay. So I'm in a weird space. But when Trump came out and backed the South American beef and basically told the ranchers to suck it up, of course, the ranch community, which is a lot of who voted for him, freaked out. They're like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? So here we are now. And of course, Trump's just buying the South American beef, which just chaps me for a million reasons. One of them being that the South American cattle ranchers are razing down the rainforest to make more grazing land for these cows because America keeps buying more of them. And I think McDonald's, some other large chains, and I don't want to speak out of turn. You might want to Google this. But I had a good friend of mine in the food industry years ago who told me that McDonald's bought a lot of that South American beef. So again, please double check that with your own sources. But I do know that a lot of our mass-produced food chains in the United States buy a lot of that beef. Problem is they're raising the rainforest to make the grazing room. So now Trump's like, well, we're going to buy even more of it. And I'm like, could we just not cut down the plot of trees that provides the planet of Earth with over 40% of its entire oxygen load? Could we not cut that down? When you could come here to Montana and you could go to the Dakotas and there's nothing but rolling prairie and grass on the eastern half of the state. There's so much free grass those cows could eat. Eat them up, cows. Not a darn tree in sight. So I sit there and I just cringe for all of this. But again, in this case, Donald Trump is choosing the role of the rusty ship that's sinking. He's not becoming the water. He's not becoming the predominant element. The predominant element is conservation of the planet. The predominant element here is the white elephant in the room, which is the love for the planet, the love for one another, supporting our industry here. And I mean, my God, you guys, the United States, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, the United States feeds the world. California alone provides over 80% of the produce for the entire country. Okay? And our wheat fields usually go, a lot of that goes to China. A lot of it goes over to Europe. So we feed the world. And when our farmers are failing, not only are they failing and not able to keep their family farms, which is tragic enough, people, okay? But we're starving out the people who get our food. And we're going to have a lot more food insecurity coming up, guys, because of the weather changes that we're in the midst of. We're going to have a lot of weather changes coming up. So we need to be the water. We need to become the most predominant element on the planet. We need to infiltrate every crack and nourish every crack. And if that means the boat's going to go down, well, we need to make sure we get it to port because it's sinking anyway, guys. Again, we are getting off the ship to get onto another ship in order to be sustainable and float all of us. But right now, it's really important to be in the flow. And I made this decision today. I was posting up this whole story about the egg thing. I just couldn't believe it. Talk about not... Man, Donald Trump has really lost his ability to read the room. I think that might be because he's tired. And I know a lot of people that just hate his guts and a lot of people that love him. He's not my favorite. I'm not much of a fan. I don't hate the guy, of course. I just don't. I don't hate anybody. But I look at this man and I think he needs to rest. He needs to sit down. He's making terrible decisions. He's making terrible decisions for the economy, for our ag producers. And it just gets worse and worse. So I'm not here to talk about the terrible decisions that Donald Trump is making. He is an example of this rusty ship that's in the process of going down. A ship is only concerned with itself. It's only concerned with where it's going. It points its rudder, it parts the waves, and it goes. If you happen to be on the ship, you're going where that ship's going. Right now, not only is our ship sinking, but we are headed towards the rocks because the people who should be steering the ship are not. And everybody's let go of the wheel. So it's kind of going wherever, and this ship is going to beach itself. And I'm really hoping we can get it to port before that happens. There's a lot of good people who have found out that the ship's wheel has just been let go of, and they're running to grab that wheel. And we can all do that in our own communities, in our own ways. And I honestly, this message goes out to Republicans. It goes out to independents. It goes out to Democrats. It goes out to people who don't care about any of that. It goes out to every human with ears. And that is just shine so brightly in your community. That's how you be the water. That's how you nourish. If you've got to, again, if you don't have time to volunteer, say something nice on social media to someone else who is volunteering. Support in ways that you can. There's a lot of people I know, and again, I'm only talking to the people on the left about this because I'm a left-leaning voter. Yet I know a lot of people on the left who just quit giving money to the DCC, the DNC. They're so sick and tired of that money going nowhere. I know I don't give to the DCC because the DCC doesn't spend any money in Montana. They literally see us as a wash. They've kind of washed their hands of us, even though Obama won this state, But they're like, nope, well, why even bother? I'll tell you why to bother, because there's a lot of ranchers and farmers who voted for Trump who are a little disenfranchised right now. And I mean, my God, look at what happened in Wyoming, you guys. And I know I've talked about Harriet Hageman before, but Harriet Hageman is Wyoming's at-large one representative. And I think Wyoming has around 400,000 people total for a whole state. So they only have one representative. And it's Harriet Hageman. She beat out Liz Cheney for that in their election. Last time Harriet Hageman was in Wyoming, she got booed by her own people. And people were screaming and yelling and booing at her. And she was like, well, you're all going to have a heart attack. I don't know what's wrong with you. You need to listen to me. And I'm from an ag family, and people booed and booed. And of course, Fox News got a hold of that and said they were all trucked in. They were all fake. They were paid protesters just for this thing. Let me tell you. She was in some little town in Wyoming that's a little hard to get to. And if you don't know what I'm talking about and you don't know Wyoming, I think probably the only place in the United States that's more remote than Wyoming is Alaska. Not even kidding you. Wyoming is harsh. It's rough. It is rough country down there. So the thought of all these tourists coming in on a bus to get in and find Harriet Hageman and boo her was hysterical. All of us who are from this area, we were all dying laughing. We're like, oh God, you'd have to pay the charter buses to even get into the state, to even find the tiny town. I mean, it would be hilarious. It's a hilarious visual that was not true. So again, what we're talking about is a collective. These people booing Harriet Hageman are Republicans. These people were the MAGA people who voted for her. They are displeased with the direction that things are going. So, they're trying to become the water, and we can oppose, we can this, we can that, we can sink. But the best way we can be the water is to come together and be the predominant element. And that means Democrats, that means Republicans, that means independents. That means we kind of just park these labels off to the side for 5 minutes because we got bigger fish to fry as the ship is sinking. Way bigger fish than whose jersey are you wearing? I can't really read it. It's soaked with seawater and a lot of seaweed. I can't really read even the logo I'm wearing right now. That's where we're all at, guys. All right. So if we can all be the water together, then we're going to get into a flow, and we are going to neutralize what's sinking the ship. We're going to bail it out faster. We're going to stop opposing the largest element that we're in, which technically speaking with the human race is connection. It is love. We've really stumbled in the United States after COVID. I have to say I'm probably one of the weirdos that loved COVID when it first happened. No, I didn't love it because people died. That was incredibly hard. It was a scary time. It was very tragic. Yet the time I spent with my family, I loved. I loved it because my family was being pulled in so many different directions, and we never got a chance to sit down at dinner with one another. Well, speed up 4 months in, and I'm literally crying. I'm literally crying in the bathroom, saying to my wife, am I ever going to be able to go and talk to people again? Oh my God. I mean, the isolation really got to me. I'm not quite an introvert, so that was kind of rough. But after that, guys, societally, we never did talk about, in the United States, we never did talk about the collective grief of living through a pandemic and being shut down for a better part of a year. We've never talked about what that psychologically did to us because I don't think we can handle it. My God, we were all locked in our homes, and some family members didn't see each other for a year. I mean, guys, this is a big deal. We have collective trauma in our sinking ship that nobody's even talking about. That's a much bigger deal than what jersey you're wearing, according to which team you support right now. And that collective trauma is informing our responses to this bursting hull filling up with water. It's informing how we are behaving in this crisis situation right now. And we never even covered it. We never even covered the businesses that went out of business. God, my wife's gym, which was huge. It was huge. It was a huge staple in the community. And there were some other business issues that went down right before COVID. However, it was ultimately COVID that killed my wife's gym. And she was in the paper. She had won community awards. That she had built a movement of wellness in Billings, Montana. First through Fit Body Boot Camp and then through Kinesi Coaching Studios. And, like I said, there were some other business things that happened there. But literally the thing that ended up sinking it was COVID. And my wife worked for 12 years to build that business. And it was just gone. Gyms were the first one to close. She tried to keep people, she tried to keep their subscriptions going by doing remote workouts, and we set her up with cameras and lav mics and, really worked hard to get people to see, so they could do their workouts at home. But that's what killed it. We don't talk about this collective trauma. Instead, we keep adding collective trauma to the trauma. And we're wondering why people are shutting down and shutting it all out. So we went into this crap show poorly emotionally prepared for any of it. And now people are so bell-rung. They're digging in. They're acting like they are the ship. I'm going to grab the rudder and steer it somewhere, anywhere. Somebody grab some direction here. Guys, we all need to be the water. We need to be paddling, all of us. We need to be flowing towards the port. Because the only way we get through this, the only way as a nation we get through this crap show time frame is to begin to figure out a way to have grace with one another, and especially grace with those that we're so stinking angry at and stinking hurt by that we can barely stand it. That's the challenge. Anybody can be a prophet during good times. We're all winners in good times, right? But it's harder. It's harder to be a prophet in a time frame where nobody wants to hear your message because they just want to be pissed. So if you're out there being the quote prophet and you're working as hard as you can to bring awareness to your community and to bring community oneness together, while our commander-in-chief, our president, our divider-in-chief is going crazy. He doesn't care, you guys. He doesn't care at all. He is the ship barreling to wherever it barrels. And he's kind of hoping half the time somebody else is steering. Once in a while he grabs it and he jerks the wheel one way or the other. And, people fly off the deck and he's like, oh, I don't care. You should have been hanging on to something. I don't even know. And then he goes back to just barreling in this direction. And our neglect, our apathy, our lack of wanting to be involved, our poorly spent privilege has enabled this. And the cowardice of the people that are working directly with the ship. So the rest of us now are like, well, God, now I'm really, tits deep here in this mucky, gross sewage water and the ship is going down. How can I be the water, Danielle? How can I be the water? We can, it's what? I'm going to quote a Pixar movie. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. I think about Dory the fish, who gets caught in the Finding Nemo. Dory the fish gets caught in a tuna fish net when she and Nemo are on Nemo's journey. And she's panicking along with all the tuna. Remember that scene in the movie? And they're all, oh my God. And Nemo says to his dad, Dad, I know what to do. We all have to swim down at the same time. We have to swim down at the same time. And of course, Nemo's dad's like, no, you can't. You're going to get... Nemo goes into the net to inspire. Nemo goes into the net to inspire everybody to swim down at the same time. And of course, his dad is having a cow. And he's having a guinea pig. Week, week, week. And Nemo says, Dad, I got this. I can do it. And Dad says, oh, I know you can. I know you can, son. So he and Dory get all of the tuna fish to swim down at the same time. They're all caught in the net. The collective hysteria gets turned down, not towards the ship. They didn't go to the ship and break the ship open and sink it. They used the element of the water for momentum. Now, why is that important? Well, when you think about a tuna's tail, you guys, a tuna tail, and we're talking at like a really big tuna tail, okay? Like a tuna are huge fish. You've got newtons, thrust. You've got units of thrust called newtons. And it's about 200 to 400 newtons when you're talking force of a tuna's tail. That equals about 45 pounds of thrust power, okay, in the water. Now, why does this matter? And you're like, oh, God, Danielle, you're talking analogies and you've drugged the water through 500 analogies and now we're talking newtons and force and tuna. You have lost your mind. No, guys, I haven't, because we're talking about being the water, right? So here is Nemo, and he's in this net, and he's with Dory, and he says, all to the tuna. Everybody swim down. So you got these tuna, and each tuna has about 45 pounds of force on its tail, and it's pushing hard down. Why is that important? Because a 45-pound thrust feels heftier in water because it generates more force to overcome water's resistance, okay, compared to air, right? Barely takes anything to go through air. So honestly, it's because the water. It's because of the water. The water. Be the water. The water is about 800 times denser than air, you guys. Okay? So you got all these tuna. They have 45 pounds of force per tail whacking this water that is 800 times more dense than air. So that really the tuna have to push harder against it to create that force. Be the water. Be 800 times denser than air. Be something that when something is creating movement within you, it really has so much more force because of you are creating this dense environment where your force is then far more punctuated. So here it is. So obviously, just keep swimming and all the tuna swim. And here comes little Nemo swimming and everybody's swimming down. And, and Dory starts singing, just keep swimming. And it literally pulls the tuna net down and it, of course, breaks it off. And it starts to pull the ship over. But it is the water that allows the tuna's thrust of its tail to be so powerful. Be the water. Guys, are you getting the analogy? Be the water. It is the water that enabled that 45 pounds of thrust to be so huge. Honestly, this is why God bless all the sweet people who jump off bridges to terminate their life. That water is so dense when they hit it. It's like hitting a solid piece of concrete. Be the water, be the flow, be the dense space where the thrust in that space it creates so much more weight in order to be moving forward in that. It's important to be the flow. And it's important that just because the water is coming into the hull of ship right now, we don't demonize the water. It's the primary element. Let's not demonize love. Let's not demonize compassion. Let's not demonize setting a place at our table so that everybody can sit down, especially those who have been deeply lied to and misled, especially those who have maybe hid their little guinea pig head underneath the cloth because they are deeply afraid of what's going on in the world. And maybe they just needed some good old apple pie and Chevrolet and an American flag and a golden eagle and a bald eagle and a American president to fix everything for them. And this particular president said, I'm that guy. So all of a sudden it's all falling apart. These people are who put themselves in this position through whatever. And some people just held their nose and voted for Trump because they believe in border security or whatever. I mean, everybody votes for a million different reasons. I'm just simply saying that we need a table space for all of us. Because when we all climb onto the new ship, there's not going to be room anymore for us to hate each other. There's not going to be room anymore on the new cruise ship as we are all fighting elements and we are all wanting food to be rationed and we are all creating a beautiful space for one another and cohabitating because our earth is going through changes, you guys. So if we can be the water, if we can be this density that is also life-giving, that is also flow, and we can turn that. Yeah, we're sinking an old ship right now. It needs to go down. Not till we get to port, and we're almost there. I can see the outline of the land. We're making it. There's a few of us who are hanging over the ship and kind of paddling to help it out. We're making it. We're going to make it to port, you guys. And we do make it to port. We do get out of this, guys. Not without some loss of life, obviously. In a sinking ship, you lose some life. Not without some unfortunate incidents. But we do make it to the port because we start trying. And we start using the water's density to our advantage. And we start seeing that the density within us to love one another, that 45 pounds of thrust when we're out in a situation where we need that extra push and we don't know where we're going to get that extra push, we're going to need to come forward in compassionate courage And if you're somebody who's like, Danielle, I just can't do that. I don't have any more courage left in me. I'm tired. You just may need one more push inside of yourself. And remember, if you're like, well, this isn't a boat and I'm not on the water. No, you're not on the water, but you are water. You are over 78% water. And that water in your body is the same salinity as the ocean. You carry with you great density and power and the ability to conduct electricity. So you have your own ocean right inside of you. And if you need to lean into that ocean, to grab that piece of courage to say to that person in the epic and overused grocery store line that I'm always talking about, to say to that person, I really hope you have a great day, or I see you struggling, or I see you counting pennies. You know what? I found this $20 bill outside. It's not even mine. Do you want it? Maybe it's yours. We try to save people's dignity, right? Whatever. Use the density within you, the largest, most plentiful element on earth, water, to fuel the thrust we have going forward. Be the water in the change that we're going to bring to our beautiful world and our beautiful country. That's how we get through this, guys. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. And I will see you next podcast.